Welcome everybody to MogTalk. If you guys are unfamiliar with MogTalk, it's a show based around the Final Fantasy XIV community discussing everything from Savage Raiding to Chocobo Racing. And today we're going to be focused on killing fights extremely fast in our speed kills in Final Fantasy XIV episode 294. Jesus Christ, we're getting close to 300, aren't we? I probably should do something about that. But that being said, before going further, we have a handful of really cool guests on the show, and I want them to introduce themselves before we dive into our topic. None of this shit is lined up. My UI is fucked. I need to go in here and fix this while you guys are introducing yourself. Acedia, please take us off on that and introduce yourself.
Hello. I'm Acedia. I've played since Shadowbringers have been speed killing since about midway through Abyssos, but it's kind of a long time goal of mine. Really happy to be here today.
All right. Apollo?
Hi, yeah, I'm Apollo, and I play for Team Sleepocat. I started back in Promise, and then I've played every tier and Walker.
Okay. Jackal?
I'm Jackal. I'm Omni Melee for Sleepocat. I've been speed killing since 5.2.
Alright. Momo?
My name's Momo. I play healer for Team Sleepocat, and I've been speed killing since Heaven's Word.
Okay. Nari?
I'm Nari. I'm an Omni tank for Kindred. I've been speed killing since I joined them, so DSR, although we've only done Savages.
Okay. Nitian?
Hey, Nitian here. I lead the team RNG Factory. I am their melee DPS, one of them. Glad to be here.
Okay. And then Sura.
Hey, I'm Sura. I'm the physical range for Kindred. I've been playing since ARR, but really I've only been speed killing since Promise.
Awesome. Only since Promise. Do you guys know how long it's been since Promise came out?
I don't want to think about it.
What, 2020?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, that was COVID era. Yeah, so 2020 is probably around right.
It was the first raid after, I think, was it the first one after like a 9-month break we had?
Verse was long.
Verse was delayed, yeah.
Oh, Verse. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Holy crap, dude. But now I feel that's 3 years ago you've been speed killing in this game. So, congratulations.
This whole expansion just kind of flew by. It's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, it absolutely freaking flew by. In comparison to Shadowbringers felt like it took like forever. But that's because of COVID and everything else. Well, anyways, to not go too much into that tangent and get onto the actual topic of the show, we are doing a topic based around mostly speed kills within Final Fantasy XIV, which a handful of people watching may not know, and we kind of want to introduce that to the public a little bit, as well as go kind of deeper into it for the people who are very familiar with it, to learn more about these amazing teams who are a part of that community. So I'm going to be just throwing out questions. We have a decent amount of people on the show, so I'm going to throw out questions and let you all battle who's going to answer them by speaking quicker than the others. And I'll only moderate if I feel like I really need to. But before diving too much more in, what are speed kills in Final Fantasy XIV? What is even this? Like, people who don't know that this exists. What are you guys doing?
Don't sandbag.
Don't sandbag?
Probably depends on like who you ask, right? Because like there's like two different definitions of speed killing. There's like speed killing within like the moderation of FF logs, and like there's like true speed killing, right?
Like, it all boils down to just trying to kill the raids as fast as you possibly can, and what that actually means, like in terms of when you start the timer and when you stop the timer, and what strats and you are and aren't allowed to do is like details of whether you're operating under FF logs or not.
I mean, I think like essentially it's just we're trying to do damage to the boss as fast as possible to end the encounter, right? So like we can talk about when it begins or ends, but I think the core of it's still the same.
Yep, exactly.
If we want to be ultra permissive, basically everyone in the game tries to speed kill their boss. They want the boss to die as quickly as they can. And therefore, we're always in a competition all the time.
So a lot of people will say, all right, once the fights are over and they beat it the first time, they don't really have inspiration going back in. But you guys all have this urge to go in there and just see how well you can optimize a kill, and then kind of semi-compete with it, right? And see who can do it the fastest. So for me, I guess a lot of my personal experience, a lot of my enjoyment out of the game comes from like prog clears and things like that. But for you guys, there is actually replayability, because a lot of people complain that there's no replayability within the Savage fights, but you're on the opposite spectrum, it seems like, on that. Is that right?
Yeah, there's always things you can do better to kill the thing faster. So when you repeat it over and over again, you get better and better at doing the thing. You get luckier sometimes and do more damage with like crits and stuff. And you just keep going until you reach you set a goal and you try and reach that speed goal, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, it also taps into a different play style, because like in prog, in farm, and like in reclears, you're not really doing certain things to, I guess, kill the boss faster. Like you're not going to LB cheese, right? Like you're not doing that in a normal environment. That's like something you only tap into once you start like speed killing and like optimizing that kind of damage. There's also other stuff, but like that can be brought up later.
Yeah.
It's definitely brought out from like we clear the fights, and usually that takes like a week, and then what do we do for the rest of the time? If you kind of enjoy playing the game to some extent, you just kind of have to redo the fights. And
it's also the jobs that you take to speed codes are fairly different than what you take to prog. Summoner, red mage, anyone? Nah, we don't want those people.
Yeah, you you block them out of your groups, right?
Or we make them play something else.
Yeah.
That one JP team that brought Summoner for carryover in
That's
Part 2.
Oh, God.
It is worth noting, though, that a lot of people that try and look for more things to do in Savage will turn to parsing. And while that is opti, it's different than speed killing. One of the chief examples you can turn to is that parsing is trying to optimize your damage number, right? But that is sometimes in order to do that, you want to do things that aren't conducive to killing the boss faster. Like people will sandbag, people will intentionally slow the fight down to end on a better like burst window or something. And we don't do that. It's if that slows the fight down, we want to kill as fast as possible. We work within that that restriction.
Yeah. When you're going for your personal DPS number, it is not very I don't know. The fight doesn't really die as fast as it could. It's just however you can pump that individual's number up as high as possible to make them look as good as possible.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, I think one distinct thing too is like jobs are like, I think most people agree like jobs are like fairly easy right now in terms of execution and like an optimization environment. But when you're like LB cheesing, for example, and like you're actually LB cheesing, like thresholding properly, doing that while playing your job at the same time is like you're playing at like 150% capacity instead of like 100%. Like it adds like more difficulty to playing your job, because like you'll see a lot of people who will mess up their thresholds because like they just aren't paying attention to like outside factors. It kind of reminds me of like Heavens or TP management to an extent.
And reacting to crit RNG, right?
Yeah, actually, like clicking off mitts if you get like a crit heal or something.
I think the other thing that I'd like to add in is a lot of people say that their jobs are easy, and like executionally they are easy, but I don't really think that's true in speed killing. I think like almost every job, if you compare one player to another in logs, there's a lot of depth to it, and this is the only place in the game that's really rewarded. Even in parsing, you don't see people as clearly indexed by their ability and their specialization. It's like you can say jobs are easy, but like if jobs are easy, why is someone still doing like 3 or more potency than you in the course of the fight? And it's not a lot, but it's a satisfying way to play and to refine for me. And I think it does keep some of the concerns about optimizing jobs at bay for me.
You find all those little details to optimize that no one would ever think of when you're trying to eke out every little bit of potency you can.
Real quick,
there's so much that people like gloss over, and I mean, I think almost everyone here has had that experience where they looked a log at another group did, and it's like, oh, they just rotationally gapped me. Like they just thought about this a little better and did something a little bit better. and kind of there's always something that you're usually missing to eke out, and you have to kind of take a step back and look at a spreadsheet and really kind of think about it for a long time to see if you're really doing what's best.
Sometimes you get really funny things too. Like there's little details you can do here and there to like put a little bit more potency and buffs, but it's still basically your air quotes normal rotation. And then just sometimes you get this off the wall, so like you have to do something crazy. Like a chief example would be our Kindred's P5 kills on Carbuncle. We had buffs delayed until like 20 seconds into the fight. Which is not something you would ever do anywhere else, but it turned out to be really fast for us.
Okay. I guess it is interesting to hear how much depth you guys are putting into it. It almost sounds like there's a lot of little things that comes down to more of the player. A lot of people may look at speed kills and think it comes down to just really literally the RNG of how the numbers played out. But you guys are against that, Momo. I know you have an opinion.
Wrong word.
It can, but you like the better you play as a player, like the higher the floor of that RNG is.
So
and the ceiling.
What I would add in there is that like obviously at the end of the day there is RNG. Like you might not. The difference is between a plan that kills at like 740 and 742. It might not actually be that difference, except one of the groups ran more. But then you have to look at like it's a product of a whole system. So for me, speed isn't just killing the boss. I'm specifically interested in speeds as it exists in Final Fantasy in like a time limited context, because in a lot of games speed killing goes on forever, but in this game it doesn't, and that's like a really critical difference in how a lot of things play out. And so it's actually, you can attain an advantage by running more and like doing what it takes to run more. So clearing earlier, progging faster in the fight. So like crit, it matters, but we're playing around optimizing our odds. And at the end of the day, that's like extremely interesting activity for me.
Yeah, I think one of the things is like crit is kind of factored in. To get really technical, right, is that we look at a fight and then we try and figure out like what a actually unlikely run is. Like I'm gonna just spit out, it's like this run is like only has like a 5% chance, and we aim in our rotations around getting that like 1 in 20 clear. And so like of course it's gonna look like, oh, we really crit out of our mind, but like we are grinding and playing around eventually arriving at that result. We do our scheduling prog, we do our spreadsheet prog, and then we do all of our prep. And I would also say that a lot of I think the analogy I like to use is like the World Series of Poker. Like poker has a lot of luck in it, right? Like you don't control the cards you get. But there are people who've won that multiple times over because they're playing well and they're planning well and they know what to do. It's not exactly analogous, but it's like there's RNG, but there's still you can't control that, so you have to control everything else that you can to hopefully get the best result you can.
Do you guys have poker faces when you do your speed kills?
Like, yeah, I mean, honestly, at this point, yeah.
Okay. All right. So the really interesting thing to me in particular is that like this seems like a pretty active community overall. How many teams are out there really like pushing for speed kills, and how many like in general, how large is that community?
I think that's a little. Do you want to go?
I was gonna say that's pretty controversial.
Yeah, it's
controversial. Really?
It is actually, yeah. And part of it is that, as we talked about earlier, like who counts as speed killing? Because there's a lot of people who like everyone does their reclears and their static, and then they kill the boss at BIS a few times. They're like, wow, we got this time. Are those guys speed killing? I think in the spirit you can say yes, but like they don't appear on the rankings. It isn't obvious at the end of a patch that they placed top 10 or top 20. So how do you count that? But if you count like hardcore speed groups, like what Sleepo and RNG Factory and Kindred historically have ran, we run like 20 to 30 hours a week after we get BIS, just farming fights, plus all the planning times. Like it's a huge time investment. As far as groups that put in that much time, this tier there were only like 5, 6, somewhere in that range. But in the past it's been a little more. So probably somewhere in the 5 to 10 range in terms of like hardcore groups. But groups that play more casually for kill time, it's probably closer to the 10 to 20 range, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting topic because like realistically, it kind of goes back to like what Apollo was saying about like probability. Like you can have a 5% chance to hit X goal, and obviously running more is like going to help you hit that like way easier. So if you have like a team running 3 times the amount of like time that another group is, then it's kind of like you're kind of like in a very, I guess, bad position. That being said, though, I mean, like, kind of like the goal, I think, too, of like this MogTalk to an extent is like to get people into speed killing, right? And like, I want to be clear that you can make results with like a 9-hour speed kill week. Like, is it a lot harder? And are you at like a disadvantage? Sure, but like if you plan properly and you play properly, like you can still compete versus a team running like 30 hours just by outplaying them.
Oh, wow.
And it's also a question of like, what do you want to go for? Because there's 5 fights in a Savage tier, and you don't have to do all of them. So, I know Sleepo and RNG were both very interested in competing for 5-fight ASP, or at least we were this tier. But like in the future, maybe we don't want to do one of the fights, and it's lazy, or we feel lazy, don't want to do one of the fights, or we just don't think it looks fun, or we don't have as many hours to run. You can do just one fight 10 hours a week and still get a good result.
Yeah, like sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like picking the like if you know you have limited time, then like in a 5-fight tier like this one, you would cut out the one that takes the longest, right? And immediately the first one's carryover. Like you get rid of carryover because that counts as like basically 2 fights worth of time investment because of how long it takes to get back to carryover. Because you have to do the door boss every single time, right? So like you kind of have to like pick and choose which fights you want to do, and I mean, personally, I would just pick the easier ones because like they're just less of a time investment.
You said carryover. It took me a second to realize you're talking about like the phase 2.
Oh, sorry. Like when you carry over resources from door boss to the second phase.
Got it.
And you kill the boss.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. Because it is the faster kills on P12 P2 would be if you ran without killing yourself at the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's a PM at P12. I mean, they both, I guess, count, but...
Oh, yeah. Okay. That is actually pretty interesting. Is it, like, a fairly global community, too? Like, you're competing with, NA, EU, JP?
Mm-hmm. I'd say, yeah. JP definitely has a scene, and EU also does have, or at least... I'm not ultra aware of the EU scene, but I mean, like back when I started, it was Explosion Magic. They were an EU-based team, and like they took rank 1 overall, and it was like, dang, they're really cool. And so there are a bunch of logs that we studied back then, and that's EU. But yeah, I'd say that every region, I think there's the players exist in every region for it, whether or not they're willing to. I mean, I personally understand, any player just, I don't think I'm really willing to play that hardcore. I kind of get it.
Hey man, it's no different than trying to get like rank up in like PvP right now if you don't invest a lot of time into it.
Generally, I would say JP has the strongest regions. Yes, JP is the strongest region, and what I would observe is that a lot of their players tend to stick around with the game, whereas in NA and EU, I've seen a lot of players in Shadowbringers that just don't play the game anymore today.
Yeah,
and I think I can speak for us when I say we really like competing against JP. They're generally extremely good.
Okay.
JP's terrifying. They always come out with something scary. I think this tier there are a 1-fight team, but Eccentric / Naraka, or they were just Eccentric back in Abyssos, but I think their Carbuncle, their P5S, is probably the most terrifying and like heart-dropping log I've ever seen, where they just did so much damage. It was insane.
They had like a 0.01 or 1%?
It was a low percentage, but also they just like theory gapped really hard. And that's like when like we had been doing it for multiple tiers, and then I think all of us collectively in NA saw that log, and we were like, we still have so much to learn.
Yeah. I figured you know, to be honest with you, I mean, this is kind of the same with the world race. It feels like, is that everyone has like this fear that there's a team that's just kind of back there that just kind of shows up from JP and destroys everybody. So I can kind of relate there.
That being said, this tier was like the tier where, well, outside like the exception, the tier was like, I think JP and NA were like the closest.
Yeah.
I guess even with exceptions tech, they weren't like super far ahead.
Mm-hmm. So, how long has the speed kill scene really been alive? I guess Momo, are you the ancient here?
Oh god, yeah, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, it's been around since, I don't know. I mean, like speed killing now is like crazy more efficient than it used to be back then. Like, back then, it was like literally just like press your buttons, right? There was like hardly any spreadsheeting involved, at least to the extent that we have now. Like there was spreadsheeting, you would map out your rotation, but like it wasn't like as serious, I guess. But like now we have like simulations and things going on. It's like it's probability, thresholding. It's like even LB choosing now is like way more. Like if you could probably get like, if you do like what Exception did this tier and like Stormblood, like I wouldn't be surprised if you see like 7 or 8 LB3s in some of those fights.
7 or 8 LB3s.
Like in Stormblood. Like if you did what Exception did, yeah, like it's crazy like how like much more efficient people are now.
I love looking back at 09S speed kills back on Chaos where people were LB3ing the boss like 6 times.
Yeah.
Killing that boss.
Now just imagine that, but like more with like what people do with like actor ticks and things. It's like
we are way more like even as a raid community in general and as a speed kill community within that, we are ridiculously more matured and ridiculously more efficient as a community when we're approaching these fights and killing them.
Nice. Yeah, we definitely didn't have the same shit back in Realm Reborn and Heaven's Ward as we have today, too. And just like, I don't know, I think maybe someone might upload a YouTube video or something and they're like, hey, look how fast we were able to kill this fight. And that's all it really was back in the day, like really far back, right? But FFX didn't like exist until when?
Gordius.
So right at the end?
Technically, I think it existed in Final Coil, but I don't think it was like really popular or was like still like in the making, but like it started getting like more traction in Gordius.
Okay.
But and in speed killing too in Gordius, it's like really hard. I mean at the time people considered it speed killing, but like it wasn't like a speed killing like we do today. Like it was just killing the boss fast. I don't think people started like really speed killing until like Midas, where like Anger did like a Savage, and then Creator was like the boom of speed killing, I would say. Like that's when it like got really popular because that's when the game got like a little bit easier with the encounter design.
Yeah.
And the resetting of cooldowns. Like the resetting of cooldowns really blocked off speed killing, I think, back in the day. Like when that was like changed.
Good old hallowed ground, man.
Accessible. Yeah. Pots as well.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. The interesting thing I've heard is that because speed killing has become so technical now, I've seen people mention it as a barrier of entry. We don't have these spreadsheet tools or these sim tools, and it's like, why would even try? Since we start so far behind. Whereas in Stormblood, for example, I've heard it's just 8 players getting together and just wanting to hit buttons. It seemed much more accessible then.
100%. I agree that like I mean I don't know how long it took you guys to get your sim up and running, but like it took us like months and multiple tiers, right? So it's like that's a lot of work.
I mean, it took me 3 months to make mine, but I mean, I don't think you actually need a sim to compete. I mean, it just helps with like figuring out what your kill time's going to be and verifying certain things like comps, or like if you want to test different things like who's going to have the dance partner, for example. But I think like you don't need a simulation. I think at the bare minimum you do need spreadsheets though, and I don't think there are many public spreadsheets, but I do think spreadsheets are absolutely like necessary for speeding.
The essence of it is that to do speeds, like the only thing you need is 8 players willing to put in effort to try and kill the boss fast. That's all you need. And all of the like sims and spreadsheeting and stuff is just tools to do that faster. And like, if you want to get into it, like, and even if you want to compete, like in last tier in Abyssos, like we didn't as Kindred have very much in the way of like sims or stuff. It was almost entirely people like syncing up buffs and like planning out their rotations, and then we just went at it and we just like saw where it was working with it and made small adjustments here and there. That's all you really need to do.
Before we
the tools help a lot, but
we should probably explain a couple of those terms real quick because people might have different understanding
that's fair.
of what you mean by sim. So can
I can quickly go over.
Sure.
So sim isn't like, it's definitely not like the XIV sim that you use to practice mechanics. All it does is it takes spreadsheets or any kind of way to just tell the sim like what rotation you plan on doing. And runs those repeatedly or tries to convert that into like probabilities of getting your kill. There's like tons of ways to do it. Sleepocats, for example, literally just runs the rotation a ton of times, and crits are random, so we just randomly simulate the crits and we just check every single kill and see how fast it was in the sim, and we use that to figure out the probabilities from that. But you can do probabilistic models. Like if you're a stats wizard, I'm certain you can do that. And that's sims. And it just like, I think the really important thing to kind of reiterate is that helps when you're like actually fine tuning like a kill time or figuring out how likely the goal that you've set for yourself actually is if you need to calibrate that. But the input to it is spreadsheets and planning. And it's kind of like, it's like the 80-20 principle of 80% of the work is really in that spreadsheet planning, and maybe you get 20% of extra value out of the sim kind of helping you really calibrate a fine-tuned kill time, like knowing whether your rotation actually gets a huge ability off right before your planned kill time, or whether you might actually be undershooting and you might lose like a Hyosho at your planned kill time or at your actual reasonable kill time, and you need to rechange your rotation so you don't lose that. But that's actually like a very minor level of detail, and I know plenty of teams have had really good results just by really strong fundamentals, strong spreadsheeting, and like actually understanding their job and their rotations and doing the best they can there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you really can't overstate like how the biggest barrier to entry or not is just effort, is like showing up. Like we talked before about how probably every region has players who are approximately good enough to be on really high-end speed kill rosters, but people don't want to do it. They don't want to put in the 20-30 hours a week. And that's actually, I think, a much bigger differentiator even than player skill, is like, can you show up to raid 4 hours a night, 5 times a week, and keep trying your best to the very end of the tier? Like it's absolutely a slog.
Yeah,
and
actually be there. And not don't just like show it, like actually be there. Like use your brain.
Be prepared, like plan ahead of time, all that good stuff.
Yeah, no, and
time.
I think the thing that people also forget, and we even have to remind people like on speed teams, is like, hey, where's your sheet? You should probably spend almost like if you spend the same amount of time working on sheets as you do in instance, yeah, you're gonna have some really good sheets and you're gonna do really well. But also you think about it as like, that's 20 hours instance and then 20 hours reviewing sheets and planning. Yeah, that's a full-time job. Like, I think if you actually apply that level of effort, I mean, there's no way you can really go wrong with that. To be honest, I mean, other than the fact that you just spent 40 hours in a video game.
Yeah.
If we ignore that issue,
but you don't need to do that. You can just spend like it takes like, maybe once you get like more adept at it, it takes like an hour, maybe a little bit more, depending on like what job you play, to do like a rotation per fight. And then like if you just run 9 hours a week, I mean, that's like pretty doable without like too much, I guess, stress on you.
Unless you're the Omni melee and I have to do 4 different melee sheets per fight.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a casual speedrunner, I would say like you're more or less just running like a couple jobs, but you're not gonna like run like.
That's
liege. Here is your heal plan, my liege, Momo.
it's a characteristic of the teams that are really shooting for top of the leaderboard, that you be ready to take in several different jobs depending on what like the fight ends up what ends up working best for the fight. But like a casual group or someone just getting into it, you can just pick like the good jobs and stick with it and go for it, and you'll do fine.
Yeah, I mean it's so effort indexed. You could like easily see, maybe not this tier, but in tiers past, you can imagine someone making like a vaguely correct or correct adjacent decision, like get the comp a little bit wrong, but fully put in the effort and play really
And do
well
great,
and
yeah.
still come out on top. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
even it is so effort indexed. You could see a team who has like zero knowledge of LB gen and can only run like 2 of Monk Ninja Samurai, still like getting top 5 overall. That's actually like how effort and skill indexed it is before specifically making the correct decision and having tooling.
Yeah, well, the thing too is like, I mean, at least for melee, is like the majority of the time, the difference between melee comps is like 1 or 2%. Like it's
Yeah.
not
Yep.
really big at all.
Very good right now. I think the only melee that is like very conditional is Reaper, because Reaper is just like you look at it only seriously in carryover, but even actually I think we found somewhere it's like, oh, it's just a little bit of a bad kill time for it, but it could have been fine. It's just like, yeah, in terms of actual job balance, like Endwalker for speeds is definitely so much more better job balance than Shadowbringers, especially when it comes to melee. Now, I'm sorry for the red mage in chat, but like, or the machinists in chat, but yeah, it's so like melee comps just particularly. I mean, all you really need is like to make sure you have as a black mage player.
I
Yeah.
actually,
Machinist, you're a dancer now.
I have sort of a question actually for the more tenured members here. I'm somewhat of an Endwalker player. I played like the very tail end of Promise. And my understanding of Shadowbringer's melee balance is basically that it was really poor, and you'd take Samurai and Ninja 90% of the time, and then if you're
Yep.
running Dragoon, that's actually good sometimes too. But
Yeah.
I guess one thing I would ask is how much of that is perceived balance? Because I think even today in Endwalker, you see a lot of decisions, even in speeds, driven by perceived balance rather than actual balance, or with what teams are comfortable with. Like if you ask me, if you look back at 6.0 logs, you would think that teams should be running a lot more double Dark Knight, for instance, because like Gunbreaker's damage was really poor. The buff timings on a lot of the fights supports it, and I guess like if you did Shadowbringers today, do you think the balance is as bad as we think?
I mean, it's a much
room?
different game. I mean, it was you had like 90 seconds, you had like 80-second buffs. I mean, they weren't aligned like they are today, and that make and you saw shit like Monk with its Brotherhood and Red Mage having that. I forget what it was, but it was like emboldened.
It was the physical only.
Yeah, the physical thing. Like that really restricted it.
So I've actually thought really long and hard about it. So Endwalker has the 2-minute meta, but in practice, back in Shadowbringers, the strongest jobs were actually on the 1 and 2 minute alignment anyways. Which is why I say that balance is way better, is because a lot of it's less of the actual jobs and more of how they aligned in a way. The other thing is that, so there's other factors. Dancer was really strong compared to all the other ranged physicals. Like Bard was a job that didn't even align with itself half the time. Like it was struggling, and the Machinist was Machinist. So Dancer was very strong, and then Samurai back then didn't have like the kind of Samurai got the whole crit change in Endwalker, and that kind of that wasn't a thing, and it could high roll really well, and it synergized so well with Dancer. Ninja was just great, and I guess it's just like I think it was probably wasn't perceived as a thing. I don't think that they made bad decisions back then. I think they were actually pretty spot on with how they picked their comps. And I think just a lot of jobs were kind of thrown out mainly because the really strong jobs kind of shoehorned comps. Like you really wanted stuff that played well with Dancer and Astro. Astro was very important too. You wanted stuff to kind of fit and work with what was known as the best stuff.
Do you think Double Dark Knight is a good one to bring up though? Because they probably should have done that more often back then.
Not in Shadow. I think No, I remember Gunbreaker was, even in the best cases of Dark Knight, Gunbreaker would match it back in Shadowbringers due to just how good it was. My memory might be bad. I just know in 6.0, Dark Knight was busted. Like, Dark Knight was busted. And it should have probably been done more, I think. I think like a lot of the better times did run double Dark Knight when it was justifiable. That's just like from my memory of 6.0, but yeah, double Dark Knight was very strong. It did get toned down, and then that started to bring out a lot more of the LB based meta that we have today.
Okay.
The core of the core of speed killing, which we probably should talk about at some point.
We've been talking a lot about it, about at least the jobs, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the LB specifically, I think it's like very important to talk about and like actually go into detail. Because like I think that's like the biggest thing that holds people back from like speed killing, like compared to like the top teams, like because like it's a huge experience gap, and I guess the resources don't really do a very good job of telling you how to LB cheese.
Like, wait, so like... you don't mean like the official resources, I'm assuming?
No, I mean like there's like a guide for it, but like it doesn't really go too in depth, and like
even the Opti resources don't. Like I had to have my group when I joined it like show me how the stuff works. Like I knew nothing despite like looking into Opti like as I had been playing the game and stuff, and like I wasn't lax on that. Like I'd gotten really good at the game before joining the group, but I knew nothing about some of the details of like how LB cheese works.
Yeah, I posted a link in the chat just for everyone to like read it, and you scroll down and it'll tell you the actual ways to generate LB. First of all, if you look at Stormblood, it did get changed significantly. Actually, I don't know if this article even does it. I might have just gaslit everyone and sent them an article that doesn't tell them. Let me see if I might have to find the
wrong one. Yeah,
it's the wrong one.
I'm pretty sure the Google Doc. It's like a Google Doc.
It's a Google Doc. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how hard it is to find. Is that I found the first link I looked at actually doesn't have the details.
The best way to learn it is just to find someone that already knows and will tell you.
Yeah.
The short version for the people watching is that there's a passive LB generation that everyone is pretty aware of, which is that you get a tick every couple of seconds, and then after a couple of minutes into a fight, you get the LB bar. But you can do it actively. You can, if you heal someone from when they're really low on HP, and you save them, the game is like, wow, that's cool, and it gives you limit break because you performed an act of heroism or something. And then if you save someone by mitigating them with a target emit right before they die, that also gives you LB as an act of heroism.
All right.
So you can game this. You can manipulate it and get more LB than intend you to.
Just so you guys know, if you didn't tell when Apollo initially tried to post the link,
I wanted to get banned.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I actually, let me do a shout out for someone who actually they made a cute little video. Kind of feels like a Junebob video, but it's actually about how damage like when you survive damage and how that works. And it also goes to a very important distinction. When you like reprisal and addle a boss, it reduces the damage they do, and that is very different with LB than mitigating the damage you're taking via like Heart of Light or something, where for the purposes of limit break, you have to be receiving a lethal hit and then survive it with a mitigation that's on your character. So if you reprisal the boss and it then does damage that is less than your current HP, you actually don't get NHEs. Which is why you'll see like you'll see some logs and it's like, why has the tank not used reprisal the entire fight? And it's like that. That's the reason. That's actually the reason why. So
kind of goes into my point though, right? It's like you have this information that you're talking about, and you have the information in this document. Like, how does the average player take this information and utilize it to where it's like beneficial to them, right? Because like they see all this information on this document and they hear what you're saying. Like, what does that mean to them? How do you explain that to them?
Yeah, I have actually had like a good like player come and ask me why in a speed kill I had never used reprisal. When they like thought I was a bad tank, and it was intentional because of LB stuff, and they just didn't know.
Mm-hmm. If you guys do me a favor, any links that you guys are throwing in chat too, at least people on the show, feel free to also, like you did, Momo, just throw those links into the little chat we got, and that way I can throw it on the YouTube video as well. Yeah.
But the end goal of all of it, the point is the fact that we can use raid wides, and sometimes things we're not supposed to take damage from, like everyone standing a tank buster, for example, and use this mitigation and healing and like healing people up from very low to get much more limit break than we're supposed to, and do things like in Endwalker you would limit break 3 twice, or limit break 3 and limit break 2 when a normal PF would only ever be able to limit break once, maybe.
Yeah. Like
During a faster kill time. Like, we're killing faster and also getting enough LB to then do it way, way more often than they would expect.
Yeah, like, to be clear too, it's like each LB is worth like 10,000 points. And those points are a whole LB3 is worth 30,000. Each one's worth 10,000. And then those points you can gain from just passive ticks, which are, I think it's like 220 for all 8 players alive every 3 seconds or something. But also you get 300 points of mitigation for surviving lethal damage. And if 6 players minus the tanks, like the 6 players in the group, take lethal damage, then you're gaining 1800 points just right there, right? So that's like 1/30th of an LB bar. And then depending on like how you threshold as well, let's say you drop to like sub 10% HP, because like you also get it's actually more
It's really complicated.
Yeah,
I usually just tell
Okay.
people 1% of an LB3 every time you do you cheese something. And
but the thing is,
yeah.
like, you single target, like, if you do an AoE heal, it's also worth 300 points on the party per person, right? So, but then you also have to like get into single target ticks, which are 600 points. So like, then it gets confusing, and I don't know how to explain it anymore.
So the spirit here is that if you carefully manipulate the party's HP based on the damage you take and the healing you provide, you can get more limit break, and that is usually a greater gain than any particular job you would take. So like having a whole extra LB3, that's like 550,000 damage this tier, and that's probably more than the difference between any 2 melees, for instance. So if you could somehow magically take a melee that gave you an extra LB3, you probably take them every single time.
I mean,
So
that's with like a lot of like I think one of the groups this tier, Samurai MC. I don't know why they ran Warrior for every fight, but they were consistently getting one more LB3 compared to like comparable groups who had like similar strategies. They took Warrior to get that extra LB, and like at that point it's like, okay, maybe it's better than a Gunbreaker. Not LB3, an LB1, sorry, like LB1 bar. Like that's gonna be like a decent amount of DPS, and it may be enough to beat a certain job balance, like in different difference.
That was particularly good this tier because Warrior was so close to the other like options available. Like, it was still probably worse, but it was like close enough to Gunbreaker that if you can get that extra LB bar, it was a good strategy.
I think you have to look just as heavily towards the strength of something like Shake and the unique utility provided by Warrior's other buttons too. Like, it's not. It was still like 300-400 DPS behind a lot of the time. It just happened that you could also get bar LB. But when you when you look at all this, this is really difficult. This is the most precise MIT planning you'll ever do. It's very difficult to execute. It takes a lot of practice. So this is sort of the core of speed killing as it actually exists, which is under your scheduling constraints, what's the best combination of jobs and rotations and effort and LB planning that will get you to the best result. Because like if it takes you a whole extra 4 days to practice this LB for 1 extra bar, you probably would have got a better result if you spent 4 more days farming the fight, right? So the decisions we're making is not just rotational decisions. It's planning of what do we want to take, how much LB do we want to go for, how does this fit into our schedule, and which fights is it best to spend time on. That's what the decisions you're actually making as a high-end team are.
Jesus Christ, guys! Like
we lost like 2 days worth of prog or like farm, I guess, on P11 because we tried doing double or triple LB3 Scholar Sage, and we just said, no, this is like not realistic with our given time, and we just like lost that time.
Like I consider myself a very casual, not give a shit kind of player, but man, do I feel so much smaller now than I did before. In my knowledge of the game and how to kill fights faster and how to optimize more.
Oh,
Like,
we
Jesus
should tell them about
Christ.
the tick optimization now. We were actually
Dude.
literally doing this last night because I was sick of us not getting the cheese that we wanted. And this is something that kind of became way more well known after this tier.
We say the information public.
Oh yeah, I mean we streamed it, so it's
Okay.
basically public now. But what you can do to make your heal plans even more consistent is that every player has like a 3-second actor tick, and like you actually regenerate HP, pots apply to you in most cases on this tick, and also damage from like dots apply to you on this tick. You can manipulate this tick before the fight starts. All you have to do is figure out when your tick is by just stripping off all your gear and then putting your gear back on. You'll see your tick and you can actually time it like in your head and just wall. And when you wall and die, your tick pauses. So everyone walls at the same time relative to their own actor tick, like 1 second after. When you all respawn, your ticks are all perfectly aligned, and you can actually pull off stuff like healing between every hit of a dot to get critical healing because you're all going to be aligned at the exact same time. This stuff is where it's like actually nobody's ever really taught you how to do this in the game.
Jesus Christ. Well, of
This
course
is
not.
this is like brand new. This is the tech that like Exception did to feel like the crazy LB, because like otherwise they just want to be consistent.
Man, like, you guys are digging in and uncovering the bare bones of how this game works and how it functions.
I mean, we didn't actually
You have
uncover
to.
it.
Well,
Like, so
the
that's
actor tick stuff.
that is what you just said, Frosty. That's the essence of speedrunning any game. Like
Right.
that. Like it doesn't. That's not just this game. Like speedrunners in any game. That's what they do to get better, to get faster. You dig into the finest possible details of how a game works to eke out every advantage you can get.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. No, I mean, I know that for sure, but like, it's just hearing it just feels like any standard player who is just wanting to learn more about it will probably listen to a lot of this and be like, I'm out.
Yeah, if I was a casual player and I heard somebody talking about actor ticks like that, I'd probably vomit.
I mean, I think this stuff is actually really interesting because do you remember the no healer top clear?
Yeah.
I think actually one of the things that cued us into how to actually do this is there was a video of them actually like getting themselves walled and then rezzing and doing stuff. And like, why are they doing this to set this up all pre-pull? And we turned out is that they're actually just like actor tick manipulating, and that really is important because if you're trying to do like a zero healer top clear, if you need a hot tick at a particular time, like
you know what's
better
really
do
funny?
everything.
People don't even realize how insane that clear was because they don't know about the actor tick thing. Like knowing the actor tick thing like just makes it that much more impressive, like how they like executed it.
I think people don't even understand what we might even mean by actor tick unless if they are familiar with game development. So like right?
I guess I would probably explain what that is.
Yeah.
The actor tick is on the server side. It combines all the heal overtimes and the damage overtimes on you and then deals them all to you at once every 3 seconds. This is also, for instance, the tick where mobs will update and aggro on you. So one of these regens. Oh yeah, and your mana tick. Like you hear black mages aligning their mana to pull. It's essentially that, but the full party is doing it with their HP to provide consistency.
Yeah, so just imagine the scenario where you have a dot on you and you're dying and you're like, dang, if only my HP tick came in on time. You can manipulate that.
Yeah. Which lets you cheese, therefore cheese any like I guess the big thing when it came to LB cheesing was like a lot of like groups would just like, oh, we don't want to cheese this because like it's a bleed AoE. Well, now that's no longer an issue because it's almost similar. If you guys played in Stormblood, it's almost similar to how crit autos were a thing, right? Like you would pretty much like you'd always like err on the side of caution with like the tank HP. But like when they changed it in Shadowbringers to like never crit, like you could calculate how much damage a tank would take without them dying. It's like almost the exact same thing doing the actor tick alignment with like bleed AoEs or like any damage coming out. Like there's no more like, oh, am I going to get a heal tick in time? Oh, am I going to get a dot tick before something kills me? No, like that's not a. It's static.
I think it definitely was like there's actually I think there was a tweet recently of a Chinese group who used this in 10. I don't know like the full details, but it seemed like they were practicing LB stuff. And like the opening raid wide, like they were using Seraph between every 2 hot ticks to get a critical healing like thing on everyone because they had mapped out exactly how much bit they needed. They could make sure that 2 ticks wouldn't kill them. Like it would basically they made all the numbers line up, but they were also confident that everyone would HP tick up at the same time so that no one would miss the critical healing or no one would get early ticked and die. And that's like the level of precision. Like I remember us in P7S, we tried cheesing that first raid wide, and then someone would just get early ticked and blow up, and we would it was so bad.
It definitely does change the game. Like it's huge.
Frosty, you brought up how the normal player would just nope out at this point. So I actually want to pivot the discussion to that. How would you guys kind of suggest to these kind of players how they should approach speeds?
Like, honestly, if you want to do it, just do it. Like find a group and get started. Like it's not any more complicated than that. All of these details and stuff, you can learn that on the way.
Yeah. Would you guys recommend, like, so we talked a little bit about the difference between like just the bar scene or whatever and the getting into a group that is actually doing speed kills. The first step seems like getting into the bar scene is the best way to handle that because you learn the basics of optimization through that, right? Even if it's all
it helps you learn your job.
Yeah.
But I hesitate, like, yes, that would help you get better at your job, or like if you wanted to learn a new one to be able to play it in speeds, that's good for that. But the things you emphasize in a parse run are so different that sometimes it's unhelpful.
There's so what I would say about it is there's more in common than there is like
that's true.
Different. And I think a lot of the players, even I'm not going to speak for everyone, but like a lot of us did parsing as a gateway drug, and then we eventually decided to like take it for, because I think the thing is like once you feel comfortable parsing and like okay, I'm satisfied with the parsing, it doesn't really like I don't really want to spend too much time on it anymore, but I still want to play this game at a really high level. Then what's harder than optimizing your own damage is optimizing the damage of 8 people at the same time. Like it's just a strictly harder task. And there's actually all right, opinion take. Verse was the best tier ever to speed, and I didn't even do it. Why? Because there was 2 fights that had really exciting things that if you speed ran the fights, you would skip. And E6S, it was actually really important for your pars to skip conflag entirely because there was a little bit of downtime. And there are plenty of players that got into speeding because they wanted a good pars, because it was in everyone's incentive to actually play that fight as well as you can to get through it. And sometimes like parsing will get you into situations like that that you actually end up like trying to speed kill just to get your pars, and you realize, oh, speed kill is actually way more fun.
You know, now that I'm starting to think about it, we did when we were talking about how a lot of the speed killing stuff really started to come in probably around creator time, right? A lot of fights in creator, if you killed it fast, you skipped so many difficult mechanics. And so on like a basic level of people playing the game and wanting to kill things faster, there is a lot of incentive to just learn how to be better at it and see how many of those really hard mechanics you could just completely skip.
Not even just that. It was also skipping mechanics during the fight with good damage because the boss's mechanics were tied to HP. So if you push the boss like past a certain HP before the mechanic happened, it would completely skip it.
When did Servon come out? when did Skip Soar happen?
Wasn't that the same time? Wasn't it?
3.5, yeah.
Yeah.
Problem is they just don't do fights like that anymore. Like we don't get HP pushes.
Does.
Yeah.
That's true. Zeromus does. Well, we don't get savage fights like that anymore then.
Right.
They really don't tend to put hard mechs at the end.
Yeah.
Actually, I just remembered this. But this didn't apply to any speed kills. It was just like a really funny thing that I remember is that E7S actually did have the reverse of this. If you did ads really fast, you got extra spam raid wides at the end of the fight because it had to have a static. Yeah, it had to have a static enrage time. So if you like blitzed ads and you blew them up really fast, and then somehow you still got to enrage, you would get like as many raid wides as it took to get you to the actual enrage time. And the best part is it would cancel a raid wide to then start its enrage. So your healers are actually just like mauling at the fact that this is like the 8th raid wide in the world we had to hear, like, how are we here? Why did everyone die in like Bird NATO and we're actually at the spot? And then they have to deal with 8 raid wides back to back, just have to heal it up because there's absolutely nothing you have left.
And
at
the
that
boss
point.
would interrupt its own raid wide cast bar to cast the enrage.
Yeah.
I kind of want to reiterate before we move on because
Sure.
like I don't want to get lost, but like kind of going back to what Nitian said, it's like if you're afraid of like if what we're saying is like scaring you off, you just have to do it. Like yeah, you just get your toes wet, get in I feel like the things we say are like very intimidating to like your average player who might want to get into speed killing. It might like scare them off, but like you're not going to like be the best your first year doing it, your second year doing it. Like you don't get into World Prog doing it your first time, right? Like or doing anything like super serious. Like, you just have to slowly approach it.
The issue is that like there's not a lot of groups recruiting, and I always hear people say like, "Oh, how do I get into speedrunning? How do I find a group?" And it's like you're gonna have to be really lucky to just get into a group that already exists because the community is just not very big. And I mean, my advice to that is like just make your own group.
Yeah.
I mean, it fucking sucks to make your own group to be the leader sometimes, but like if you really want to do it, that is like the best way.
I mean,
Unless you just get lucky.
You only need 8 people with like I say that like only like it's easy, but you only need 8 people with the same goal of trying to kill the boss fast. Like if you can find that and if you can make that happen, if you can lead your own group just to find that group of 8, then that's all you need and you can get rolling.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the show. If you don't mind, just give me a few minutes to interrupt it for a company that is sponsoring the podcast. Fortunately, their product is pretty awesome and tasty. Thank you, Sakura and Tokyo Treat, for sponsoring us yet again another month here in December. If you guys are unfamiliar with them, please give me a moment to tell you what they're about. Tokyo Treat is a monthly Japanese snack box that focuses on snacks that are limited edition or seasonal flavors. Things like Sakura Pepsi and Japanese sake Kit Kats. It also has things like ramen and little drinks that they'll put in there as well for you, and much, much more. Sakura snack boxes are more focused on supporting local Japanese snack makers that make traditional and artisan snacks. They'll also come with Japanese teas and tableware. And now that we're in the biggest holiday month of the year, let's go ahead and see what kind of gifts they have for us this December. For Tokyo Treat, the theme is actually going to be Christmas. In Japan, couples and friends use this as an excuse to get together and enjoy each other's company and enjoy some really good food. So, in line with that theme, they are going to have holiday treats such as the Christmas Kokutu donuts and the strawberry chocolate cake Kit Kats. Of course, instead of just talking about all the treats, let's go ahead and try one of them here for you. I, of course, want to try the donut. Alright, let me go ahead and grab it off over here. It's very festive. It has a little bear on it here at a focus. I try to get a little bit better, but it's alright. And let's go ahead and just open it up here. Ooh, it does smell like cinnamon. So, alright, let's go and try it out. Alright, yeah. This tastes like really earthy, but sweet. But again, like with all these snacks, they never feel like they're overbearing. But yeah, I mean it all. Sorry. Not saving that for anybody. But it's really good. It's extremely good. Highly recommend. And from the booklet here we have a good description of it. Have a holly jolly holiday with this rich and scrumptious Christmas donut. Its uniquely sweet and earthy flavor comes with Okinawa brown sugar. So brown sugar. Alright, now let's see what Sakurako has in store for us this month as well. The theme for their snacks is actually focused on the northern region of Japan, Hokkaido. Imagine a snow-covered and peaceful place where you could enjoy Hokkaido butter cookies and a milk mochi. Now, of course, I'm a huge fan of mochi, so that is going to be what I try from this box. Give me just a second and let me pull one out. Again, give you a quick little preview. You can see it. See how well the camera can catch that. Packaging looks really premium. I'm absolutely into it. It's not exactly what I expected with mochi, though. Usually I expect the little balls, but I guess maybe I just don't understand mochi as well as I thought I did. Pull that out. It looks like it comes in this wrapping here. Before I eat it, I believe I remember having a treat with this kind of wrapping before, and this part's not the edible part, but this clear part is the edible part. Oh my gosh, it is so soft. Hold on, let me take a look at it. Let's try to go back a little bit so you get a better view here, since the focus is all the way out here. And yeah, it just, this is very, very soft. You need this wrapping. And you know what? Just right to it. Oh my god. This is really good. And so again, I'm used to mochi being in the balls and everything, but this is in like kind of a bar. And it tastes just exactly like you'd expect mochi would. The paper tastes really good too, funny enough. But the wrapping, that is. But yeah. Oh. I can definitely taste the milk in there. This is probably one of my favorite treats I've had so far. You guys definitely should try it out if you get a chance to. Now, of course, it also comes with an awesome dish with it. It's a box it comes in, so I haven't even opened it up. I haven't even looked at it yet. So give me just a second to pop it open. And yeah, no, this is actually really, really awesome. You can take a look at it yourself here. Go back just a little bit. And this is a great dish for, you know, putting little snacks on or whatever you'd like. It's actually, I believe, microwave safe as well. If the booklet is right, give me just a second. Yes, it is microwave and dishwasher safe. Now, you know, guys, don't have to just watch me enjoy the treats. If you want them yourself, of course, you can order these boxes and get them every single month. With that all being said, of course, I want to thank everybody for giving me a moment of your time to watch me eat these treats and, of course, hear about what Tokyo Treat and Sakurako has to offer. They are both awesome services, and they would be great gifts to a family member or a friend if you're still looking for something in this holiday season. Japanese snacks delivered straight to your door from Japan, while supporting the things that we do here with the podcast and the world race. Use the MogTalk link and get $5 off your first box using the MogTalk code. We'll put that in the description so you can get to it very easily, and that will help support the channel. And again, thank you Tokyo Treat and Sakurako for sponsoring us again this month. Everybody, continue to enjoy the show. So how do you find like 8 people, or let's just say 7 other people, who all want to be like really good at speed kills and everything, but they're starting fresh?
I mean, at least for me, like when I got into it, it was like more like networking, and I did a lot of parsing, and I met people in various like parsing communities and discords, and eventually got to the point where I had enough of a network to just like DM people and ideally get 7 people together to form my own first speed group.
I think parsing is really the way to get into it. There's a lot in common, not just in getting better at doing your rotation, but being able to play really long hours and focus, being able to understand what consistency is meaningfully and how to make decisions that lead to a consistent outcome, etc. The biggest differences come in cases of like, well, you don't sandbag in speeds, but that's like what one person does. The skills involved are very similar other than that.
Yeah, I mean,
And this is actually kind of a conflict if you ask me, because like I know some people who like love speedrunning in other games, and the idea of speeding really appeals to them, but the idea of parsing really doesn't appeal to them. And I don't think there's any way to resolve that, to skip over the optimizational step.
I mean, yeah, in theory, someone can, but also like parsing it's like though actually one of the few ways to build up a resume in a way
Yeah.
for speeding, because like if sorry to be this person, right? But if someone like say we post out a thing and then someone applies and they have like blue and green logs and they only re-cleared the whole tier and I have no evidence of them actually like even doing like not even like getting a good pars, but showing like a decent rotational run.
Mm-hmm.
I
mean, I'm sure
I
that's
can't.
not. I feel like the topic's like just not even relevant, right? Because like I feel like if they're green parser, they're not going to apply to a speed kill group.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's like parsing is kind of the way to both build those skills, but also prove that you do have like solid rotational fundamentals.
Mhm.
And like you don't actually need to have the best parses, especially in the current thing where like plenty of fights need sandbags. Like if you just like have like oranges from your re-clears that show that you did really solid rotations, and you didn't drift your buff and stuff like that, like that's plenty. You'll get those parses. And I guess like to kind of sum it up is that parsing is just a great way though to really build a resume and also to like network a little bit to then get into these speed groups.
I mean, it almost feels like this is like the highest tier of effort of being good at the game, right? Even more than I would say even like the world race in particular, because it's a different set of skills you need to really know for the world race.
It's a different set of skills, yeah. There are different
Mm-hmm.
metrics in terms of like being good at the game.
Right, because that takes a lot of puzzling and figuring out stuff and finding solutions and being consistent enough to do the mechanics and execute past the barriers Square Enix gave you. But you guys are going past the barriers and you're burning it as hard as you can to the bleeding edge of like what you need to do. And I feel like that is literally the top of like optimization and effort into or at least the most effort you could put into PvE right now.
Yeah, it's there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah,
I wouldn't ever claim that speeds is harder than like week 1.
Yeah,
but the only thing is that you can only do week 1 and week 1. So like speeds is harder than week 1 prog for most of the time because you can't even do week 1 prog.
I mean, a lot of the hardest part of speeds is a logistical challenge. Like we've ran so many hours, like our groups do 20, 30 hours a week for 4 to 5 months. That's a much bigger time investment, and that's the biggest barrier to entry. Like I think it's surely the highest end. Good at the game.
I don't think time is like even super important after like running as much as we did, because like we quite literally got like our best times within like a couple pulls of getting like the fight on farm, and then we just tried farming for a better time, and every time we would get a better time we would just play dog shit, or we would like mess up a mechanic and we would die. So it's like if you like a team that's running like 9 hours a week could quite literally like pull similar results to what we did this tier, but like run at like a pretty normal, I guess, time frame. It's like
the time traveler argument, where if we went back in time and did the tier over, oh my god, it would be so much
more.
There's still a base level of time that you have to invest, though. That is a lot more than most people put into this game.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I mean, I think your average static runs like 9 hours a week. I mean, that's the same. Like if you made a speed static that ran 9 hours a week,
that's an instance though. A lot of those groups won't prep nearly as much as a speed group.
Yeah, no, of course. Like you obviously have to spend time out of the instance, but like if you just do that, you work on your rotations out of the instance, you go in, run 9 hours a week. I mean, I feel like that's pretty easy barrier to entry.
I don't know. I mean, I think that you can get into it on a base level, but I can't see us possibly getting the results we had even with every plan fully made running 9 hours a week, because
I don't think it would happen.
Well,
no, it's not possible.
I don't think that would happen.
The thing is, like, it may not get you like the top kill, but it would give you the entry into speed kills where you need to go, and you'll be more familiar with the community most likely as well, right? So it's like that next stepping stone isn't as high of an investment as what the top #1 team is probably doing at the moment, but you can start working towards it.
Back from the void.
What?
Saving the podcast and making it so inclusive.
I think okay, to be fair, if one team, I'm pretty sure like the JP teams that like ran one fight, like Eccentric, I'm pretty sure they only ran a handful of hours. They didn't run like crazy hours like we did. Like if you isolate yourself for like 1 or 2 or maybe 3 fights, depending on like how good you are, and you run 9 hours a week, I'm 100% guarantee you could beat you could beat RNG Factor, you could beat Sleepo, you could beat Kindred. Like there's nothing holding you back from like limiting your fights, but like just focusing on those.
I mean, and it would do tons for you just being better at the game, and even if you want to start maybe even getting into the world race or doing other things that are competitive PvE that exist currently within the game, it'd be good for you without putting the 40 hours in a week, right?
Yeah, it's just how you isolate your time.
Yeah.
Speaking of entry into speeds, I think odd patches are a good way to start speeding.
Oh yeah.
You have all these top logs from teams that wouldn't ordinarily be there in the event patch. All like the secrets are out there. Look at the logs, copy the comp, try to get your a time just like those logs did. That's a pretty good way to learn.
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of recreate the success to see if you can at least even just execute it with it being spelled out in front of you, right? That's kind of the goal, is to, like, if you're doing a fight and you have a guide, that's all you're trying to do is do that. But if you're trying to do week 1, you need a little bit more than just a guide. Be able to do fights with already mapped out guides. But yeah.
I think, odd patch speeds is something that I think a lot of us here have actually done to like practice and build up. And I remember doing that in Promise and like learning what other teams did. And I mean, personally, just like for people who are listening here and like in a group that wants to do maybe get into speeds, like now is the perfect time to get into it. But you can even like take a look at the logs of the teams that are in this thing and just like, hey, you can DM us and ask, like, if you have like a very thought out question of something specific that you don't understand, like feel free to like DM us and ask. And in odd patch, we don't have any incentive to like not answer. Like everything's out there. The log's just totally public. We can't change it anymore, so we may as well just tell you everything we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, every top player that I've ever known, given that, you know, it's not like something that they're trying to keep secret or whatever, every top player that I've known has always been very, very open to DMs or just general communication regarding, you know, how they do certain things, what they do, what they think about, all that. I know they're perfectly happy, and I know myself, I'm perfectly happy to give advice to anyone who asks.
Yeah, I mean, if you're so invested in it, of course you're gonna love to talk about it when you get a chance. Like, who else are you gonna be able to talk about these things to, right? So I think that's a good recommendation. Is just telling people, unless if you guys are just super egotistical and you don't care about people.
I mean, we want the speed scene to grow. Like that's the biggest want. Like, there's like a thing called RNG Academy, which is like, that's like the purpose of it, is like to help grow the speed community.
Yeah, that's something. RNG Academy. It was some baby academy teams that Jackal, Apollo, and I are working on, and some people who aren't on the podcast as well. Some of our teammates, Jacqueline and Merce, have helped out. And what we're doing is we're just taking beginner speed players who have a lot of parsing experience and helping them make the next step. So talking about how do you set goals on a specific time frame, what are different jobs good at, not good at, what kind of LB should you go for, how do you execute that, and playing with them for a little bit, hoping to teach them some stuff. And the idea is, if we're able to do this at least this time, so we're introducing like 15 new players, and if we do it a second time with another 15, ideally there's enough people there who actually care to stick around and keep speeding in 7.0 plus.
It's a very long and drawn out recruitment process where we're actually just, you know, putting them all in the pot, you know, like all the poisonous animals, seeing which one comes out the strongest, and then we take that one. It's actually completely selfish, and we don't do it for anyone's good except our own.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Mile.
Yeah. You know, do you guys have like your base group, like Sleepocat and everything else? But do you guys have like you're building, trying to get more than one Sleepocat maybe in one day, maybe have another team, do a couple teams to just be like a sort of like a competitive PvE organization in a way, to where you have a couple of groups running instead of just a couple, or just like the one?
Like an A team and B team?
That's
a very vague musings in that direction, but I don't know if anyone's actually doing anything like that.
That's a very interesting question. The answer to that is it could work if multiple teams split off and do different fights. mainly it's like if a team wants to be a 5-fight and like kind of, you know, even patch team, I think it's just fair for everyone if they just like go off and like work on their own, or if they collaborate with their own group. But if you want to collaborate with another team, I think the best way to do it is just like split up and say, hey, I'll take this fight, you take this fight. Like work together, but like kind of divide and conquer it and bounce ideas off. But it really would take out the you're not competing with that other team.
I mean,
And therefore there's no incentive to actually, you have all the incentives to help them if you split up fights. That said, I'm not sure any teams actually done that unless maybe they figure it out. Yeah, I haven't seen any team that like either that have like uploaded to the same static, but you can see that in each fight it's like a totally different set of players. I've never actually seen that done.
Well, I mean, you can just do recruitment farm stuff, right? You just have like a FC or whatever, and you're just inviting people who are interested in doing it, and you have the top group that's the best performing, and another group, and then they can move up depending on how good they do or perform and stuff like that.
Remember there was like jokes about making like a super NA team with like Kindred. But I think the issue too with something like an A team and B team is like the second that somebody doesn't want to do something, it like doesn't work, right? Like if you want to make like two separate teams that do one team does 2 fights, the other team does 3. Okay, what happens when like one person wants to be on the 3-fight team, or what if one person wants to be like doing 5 fights or more than like the other 3?
Someone wanted to do 2 fights that are in 2 separate groups.
Yeah, it's like it is so much friction or potential friction.
Yeah.
And it's already hard trying to find like 8 people that want to skill like at like the level like that we want from people or someone, and it's like trying to make like 16. It's like
Yeah.
Sort of a related question is, have you guys had the experience of going from one group to another group? Like one member joins in another group. Is there like this awkward learning period where you just all have to kind of jive together in the right way, and it takes you guys a little bit to just like get used to each other, or is it pretty much just you jump into the group and you do exactly what you would be doing anyways?
It's a good question. I back in Promise, I was in like multiple different groups, and it at the same time actually, and there's definitely a different vibe in between each team, and I do think that's important. That's part of also like why recruitment is rough, is because you do have to spend time with the player, and you're going to be spending a lot of time with that player over the course of your speed season, if you're doing especially even patch. And yeah, it's like a lot of times you really need to make sure that vibes work out with that player. It this is, I think, like recruitment. So kind of a segue, but I did a polling for like making a speeds competition, and the #1 biggest concern that everyone put into the poll when they filled out, and like they filled out, is like, anything else you want to say? They don't know how they're going to find a team. Recruitment. It was the #1 biggest problem that showed up in the poll. And like, how am I going to find a group of 8? You know, how can I make sure that the players that I might need to use to fill out my roster are the right players? It's so difficult, which, I mean, it's kind of formed my opinion. It's like the second hardest thing in this game is being a good player, good enough to do speeds. The #1 hardest thing about speeds is finding 7 other players who are good enough to do speeds, and that you can like work together with.
Yeah.
I mean, the same as any group's recruitment. It's just like the pool of players is significantly smaller, and then you're also going to spend however many hours with them. So you really need to make sure it's right.
But like also getting back to like how you get in is, if you can get through that hurdle of finding, like making that group of 8 people who worked it well together, who are driven to improve, then like you're really far. You've done the hardest thing in the game, basically, is building a group of 8 people who have the same goal in mind and are willing to go about it. And then all this stuff about like finding out the obscure knowledge is like, you will get that on the way. Like, we didn't start this speeds knowing any of this. We had to learn along the way, and it's just like every tier we just learn a couple new things and incorporate them into our processes to make ourselves more efficient. It's a journey, but like the hardest part, and if you're able to pull that off, you should be proud of yourself just for being able to do that and getting started, because you've done the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think that as we've kind of said but not explicitly, the biggest thing that is like the most important thing at any level of play, all the way down at the casual level to all the way up to where we are with Warprog teams, speed kill teams, all that sort of thing. The biggest thing to find in people is group cohesion. You want to be able to jive with the players that you're with. You want to enjoy the time that you're spending when you play the game. It's just a game, and it's just so important to find 7 other people that you enjoy playing with, that you are having a good time with, and that all share the goals that you're looking for as a group.
Yeah, I think that transcends to like literally statics and groups everywhere, or no matter what the their goals would be. Just this goal is so much tighter.
Yeah,
so much
and
more
there's
niche.
the number of players that could potentially fill your group is just much smaller compared to the rest of the community.
Right. I feel like hearing your guys' passion and absolute interest in this, it's almost sad there's not like more events out to kind of cater towards all the work that you guys do. I mean, right now what you are doing is you're killing as fast as you can, and it's going up on a leaderboard, and that's it right now, right? But it almost feels like there should be some gauntlet runs or things like that to help give you guys a place to actually execute
I think
all your skills.
This topic breaches one of the biggest problems in the community for me personally, and it's something we could talk about a little bit here, which is the fact that speeds only matters on the patch that the content is live, on the even patches, as we've been saying. Means that there's a time limit. There is an ending point that after that, no one really cares about it anymore. Okay. And that then means that the competition is so fierce, and you get people keeping secrets. Like a lot of the speeds teams will not stream at all because they don't want to show off strats or new things they've found, and that hurts the visibility a lot. Like people don't even know that speeds goes on a lot of the time sometimes.
Yeah,
it's a problem because that it's such an important competitive advantage to be keeping those secrets that it's almost an unsolvable problem, unfortunately.
It kind of, yeah, no, that's fundamentally it, is that because so a lot of the teams, and just like as the thought process, I'm just gonna walk through it, is like when the patch ends, that's kind of when all the runs lock in, and then like we don't want to do odd patch a lot of times because we're tired. Like we can't do this anymore. And we like it. There's like almost a lot of these teams almost like that there's a stopping point, because then like they can kind of be relieved that they finished and kind of close it out. But it turns it less to a competition rather than a collaboration. And I think the very jarring thing that a lot of people who come into this game and they like might speed run other games is that it's much more collaborative. I'm not going to talk about every game because I don't know every single game speedrunning community, but most of them are way more collaborative. Like people are way more willing to share, but because of the fact that there's kind of this time limited competition, a lot of people approach it, and like understandably so, as a competition, maybe like F1 racing, where some of the secrets of your team do remain hidden, like you are trying to compete and win. Or like League of Legends, you're gonna hide your comp picks, like your secret stuff, because you do want competitive advantages. So it's kind of systemic, and like Nari said, I don't know if there's truly a way to fix it. But Odd Patch is probably the place where, if you wanted a more collaborative and working and kind of just like doing it for fun to see what you can do, Odd Patch is definitely a better time. And you can also get more help from people in the community during Odd Patch.
And it's also worth bringing up that a lot of these teams bring the secrets, or have the secrets, and do get competitive advantage out of them, but you also don't have to. Like in Abyssos Kindred, we full streamed everything we did in terms of speeds, and we still did like incredibly well. So it's not like you get an advantage out of it. A lot of people want to do it, but you technically don't have to. It's a whole thing. Like this is probably the key issue in the whole community.
I
It also
mean,
doesn't help that odd patches are like very gate kept in terms of speeds.
Also
And-
true, yeah. People just like they'll say like it doesn't count or who cares, but when like it's still fun.
I've never heard anyone say odd patch speeds doesn't matter or
Oh,
they don't
it's
care.
it's
I feel like okay,
it's
I
been a
don't know
thing since
anyone
like
who
Heaven's
actually
Word.
yeah, but I don't know anyone who actually does speeds who says that it doesn't matter. Like if
Oh,
someone came out
yeah.
with a 631 P9 today, like no
be
one
sick.
here is gonna disparage them. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that. I don't think that the people who do speeds already and care about speeds disparage odd patch
Yeah.
at all.
I mean,
I would
that's
agree
not-
with Apollo in that we can't run past 6.4 because like we're tired, we need a break. But nothing stops a speed scene from existing today. And I'm hoping that because we have some academy teams out there doing speeds now, because I've heard of some other groups who are looking to get started and put up times this patch, that we do see a little bit of an odd patch scene. And I think with a year of break, it's certainly possible.
I mean,
Although to be honest,
the whole issue is that we don't care, or we don't think that, right? Or like the good players in quotations don't think that, right? But like you have people parroting other people's irrelevant opinions, even though they
Final
don't do
Fantasy 14 community.
yeah, exactly. and then they form this like weird, I guess, gatekeepy aura over like odd patches, because it's not just speed either. It's like parses, right? Like I'm sure you've heard like, oh, this guy is like an odd patch parser. You know, it doesn't mean anything, right? It's the same thing for speeds. And it's like people say that, and it's like those people are like, if they are like a good speed killer, they're probably in the minority, because like I'm pretty sure everybody who's a speed killer right now, like in the top 10, I would say just wants more competition. Like
yeah. I also will say with odd patch speeds is like plenty of you can kind of like judge them on their own merit. I think 6.1 lots of teams, you know, really kind of went back and took another shot at it to really optimize. Like 3 out of the 5 fights, like the even patch times got beat by an odd patch time. I think there were job balance changes, so it's not apples to apples, but like I remember looking, there was because back in 6.0, like 636 was the best time on Hesperus 1, and then 631, like job balance isn't gonna take 5 seconds off. Like they did better. Like that's, and nobody can take that one away from them, even if it's an odd patch. Like if anyone says that it's not worth anything, that's crazy.
So, I mean, the other factor we're not really talking about too much is ultimates often come out in odd patches too, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
So
people get busy.
that kind of derails a lot of it for teams, and so it makes sense that there's a clear cut point, I guess, there. But yeah, I guess the what would be neat in a way, I don't know, I'm just capitalizing off of the community interest, of course, is once the even patch is over and it rolls over to the odd patch, just like that week after or next week after, if there's like a speed run event or something that happened right after that, that could gain some traction, just so everybody can show off what they do, get rewards, whatever. Maybe that would help a little bit, but
I know FF Logs was looking into something. I know Apollo was also trying to make some bi-weekly or weekly thing as well that lasted for like X amount of time, and you get something. But I know FF Logs was like looking into it officially, and like was gonna give out like was it they like achievements or like some kind of like thing on your profile, like a award or something with their new site. And they're like looking into doing like fun stuff like that. I'm not sure if that's ever gonna come to like fruition in like a fast time or fast manner, but
yeah.
I think like it's really hard, right, to like do events like that, because it's like if you do it, it'd have to be like during an odd patch, right? Like I mean, yeah. But then it's like you have, it's just because like if you do it during even patch, the serious teams are gonna probably like not do them unless like it's in their benefit to do it. But if you do it in an odd patch, then the teams that were doing it in the even patch are gonna have the advantage. So it's like, how do you solve that issue? It's hard.
I mean, you could just do it at the end of an even patch, and that information just won't be public anywhere, right? like what they did and everything.
You want to be like fair, right? I mean,
yeah.
You want it to
So
be like as fair as you can get it.
Well, as
I think
fair
there's
as
a
like
little bit of
information is like important in a way too, right? Is it fair to withhold information? Isn't that technically fair because they figured it out or whatever else? But
I meant more like you don't want the people doing like that kind of event to just be like RNG Factory, Sleepo, except like these teams.
oh,
that,
you're
like,
right. You're right. Right.
like
so
the insane teams that like run insane hours.
it just
for doing
no
insane
one
things.
can make everybody just use debt only and no crit.
So we touched
No direct hit, no
Based.
crit. There you go.
so we
Based.
touched on this earlier, and I think that part of the solution to this quote unquote problem, if you see it that way, is like evaluating every team's work in their own right? Because I don't think that if we had an odd patch speeds competition, it was quote unquote unfair. That's not necessarily a problem, right? Because if a new team comes out and they get a time which is 4 seconds worse than the rank 1 time, like they absolutely deserve to be applauded for that. It's not like they didn't put in work. It's not like they haven't achieved something. So I think if as a community, if we get better at qualitatively evaluating things on their own merits rather than just looking at the rank, I think that's more that's very beneficial to culture and speeds, culture and parsing, etc.
Well, we're
But
talking
I
about
don't
like
think that
an
we can do
event,
that.
not like we're
Yeah.
talking about like an event where your time is you get like a week to do X fight with X comp or like X job, and the fastest team is whoever is the fastest within that period, not like
Yeah.
overall.
So since I'm like kind of working on this, I'll just drop info about the competition I'm working on if it does come to fruition, because I'm still building it out. Other than the whole recruitment prog thing, it's like one of the other comments that showed up is definitely the whole competitive aspect. Like they really want people who are around to like actually like help mentor them and like kind of guide them, not do it for work for them, but like to guide them. And also that those competitions might be much better structured if there were already times set that you should aim to beat rather than for you to compete against other teams. I'll say an example, right, of we set up a competition for, say, door bosses tier for Athena, and we spit out 3 times that we tell the teams, like, hey, we'll have a gold time, a silver time, and a bronze time. You're not competing against each other, though. If you have the fastest time, like, that's awesome. Like, that's great. You did good work. But to set those times as kind of things for people to really gate and, like, to aim for, to build their rotations around so that they can aim to beat those times, and also to, like, really, like, take the challenge that they want. Not to compete against others, but to compete for themselves. And that's one of the suggestions that came out in the poll that I thought really kind of hit as, okay, that makes a lot more sense versus, hey, yeah, you're locked in the pit with RNG Factory. Good luck. Like, it's like
no, I like that idea a lot, because at its core, speedrunning is like it's in a single player game, it's you playing the game, trying to play it faster than you have done in the past. There is a leaderboard maybe that you're comparing to other people, and that's incentive to get better. But at its core, it's just you getting better than yourself repeatedly. You expand that to FF, it's a group of 8 trying to do that together, but the essence is still there. So if you, I like that idea of having it less be a competition to be the fastest, and rather just here's a goal, here's a medal for achieving that goal.
Yeah,
And,
I
like,
think that's actually really doable too.
it's very doable, and it's also like you can appeal to a much wider range of audiences.
Exactly.
Like, I think I definitely talked with a lot of people, because I mean, when I was actually looking at the fights we might potentially do, it's like, and I just spit out the gold, silver, and bronze time. I was like, that bronze time's ridiculous. Like, no people aren't gonna do that. But it also can help the organizers in a way. The way I thought about it is I could set the times to send a message to the teams about how you should play. For example, right, back to Athena, if, for example, the gold time was a 6:15, that's actually that's a rough time for a new team to do. Like, I'm gonna be upfront, but it would basically tell the team, hey, you need to learn how to send opener buffs, like 0 GCD, like 0 on the dot buffs, and not drift at all to even have a shot at that. Because if you lose buff duration at the end of the fight, like you're gonna be really in trouble. Basically, you can't run a standard opener. You cannot get away with that. And it would tell them very much up front like what they have to play for and how to spreadsheet around it. A lot of the times it's like knowing the right kill time to play for also like is the tricky part of speeds, and it really just breaks a lot of the barrier to entry. And if you set some times that are less ambitious, like the teams can really just knowingly go, hey, I really wanted to get a silver and I got the silver time, and I'm really happy about that with my group.
Awesome. No, I mean,
Yeah.
they could even do that within Final Fantasy XIV officially, you know? I mean, if they really wanted to.
Oh, they could.
And they could just say
They'd
at
have
the
to-
end, it'd be
they'd
S,
have to
S
implement a
rank,
Trackmania system.
A rank, you know?
All right, there are things that are
Nah.
not allowed in speeds, like I think people would do for that if there was like an actual official like
Okay, fair.
ranking system, like out of instance buffs. You can buff everyone up out of instance, load in, hope that your SSD processes and gets you into the server fast enough, and they have a good enough like.
That's kind of what
like-
I was referencing at the start of the podcast when I said like you have fastest and then you have like FF logs fastest. Like technically, if you want fastest, you know, we're talking like solo tank, solo healer sometimes. Out of instance buff, like there's things that are banned on FF logs that you can't do in like a normal run.
Okay. Well, let's dig into that a little bit. I mean, like you guys, this is the community you built. You all, everyone that's interested in speedrunning has built overall. And so this isn't anything to do with, anything official with Final Fantasy XIV. This is all you guys kind of saying this is the right way to do it, right?
See, that's kind of that's a hot topic as well. Yeah, because there have been some times where a decision was made by the creators of FF logs, or they polled the entire community and not the speeds people that cared, and like something that the speeds community didn't want happened, for example.
Oh, okay.
Or like what if there are people like myself, for example, that want to try and do those speeds where you have out of instance buffs and solo healers and that kind of thing. There's no space for us to try that because the only thing that exists is the FF logs. And it's
Okay.
it's kind of a weird thing.
You have like I think out of instance buffs is just straight up blacklisted.
Currently,
you have
yes.
non-standard technically, but like nobody cares about non-standard because nobody like competes in it. So it's like, yeah, there's just.
I mean, I guess what I'd offer is at the end of the day, there's so few teams and there's so few people who follow speeds. I think I know like one or two players who aren't on a speeds roster who can tell you like even in the ballpark of what speeds results looked like in the past tier.
Yeah.
Even like my best friends, I'm gonna spend 600 hours of my life on this over 5 months, and they're gonna have like no idea how it turned out.
Yeah,
It just is what it is.
Right.
But like you can't get more people to follow speeds. So this is why I actually don't think things like private logs are an issue, because I don't think it's a good spectator sport the vast majority of the time. I think we could do more to engage the community, but I don't think you're ever going to get a lot of eyes on it. So like if someone wants to do non-standard speeds, like just go do it. I don't see I don't think we should spend a lot of time talking about how we should accept that. It would just take one roster to do it. Like it's hard to get 8 people, but it's only 8 people. I think we could.
We had one. We had that one. A group that did that. Susuru did that, and then they got like fucking ostracized.
Well,
okay, no,
anyone...
that's because they broke a rule in FF logs, and then they uploaded it to FF logs.
Yeah,
like,
and I also don't know anyone who
fair.
ostracized Susuru. I think everyone here would still respect them as some of the best
everyone
players.
here would, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
that Ariel Mazov is like, if you ask me my top 5 players in the game, it's Ariel Mazov, Ariel Mazov, Ariel Mazov, Ariel Mazov, Ariel Mazov. That person gets a damage down and rank 1 logs. I don't know.
You mean like you did in P11, but we wiped?
God, it's they got they're like they were Suru's one of Suru's tanks, and I love them because like they're a gunbreaker. They get a damage down. Yeah, it's still the best. They did the SSD strap, but like that, they got a rank 1 log with a damage down in Door Boss of Promise. So they did Eamon's Promise and got a damage down during Lions, rank 1. That player is like my goat, and I love it. Sura I kind of miss.
I mean, I guess what I'd offer is I don't think Speeds is so small that we can talk about what the public perception is, but there almost isn't a public perception of Speeds. Like Frosty, you're one of the most centralized, embedded people in our community. You respect
call
every
me
way of
out.
playing
Don't
the
call
game.
me out.
And I've seen you include so many people on this podcast, but I'm sure there's a lot of stuff we're going over that even you didn't know, and that's not a bad thing. That's just the nature of how niche what we're doing is.
Yeah.
And like you could try and expand it more, but I think there's almost no barrier that we need to feel in terms of community perception or what is accepted outside of FFLog's rules, because there's like not that many people who care besides the people in this call, our teams, and then an equally sized group in Japan. Like it's really small. We can do what we want at the end of the day is how I feel about it.
I think that
you can do what you want, but it's like there's the aspect of like competitiveness too. It's like sure, it's like once you get to a certain point, it's like I'm sure like if like let's say you were in a ranking of like yourself, right? Like you're gapping other teams by like let's say like I don't know 30 seconds is something exaggerated. It's like at that point it's like why do you even care to like keep going? Like you know like if there's no other team to compete against after a certain point, like after you reach a certain skill level, it's like what's the point?
I mean, that just means,
but it's like
that just means your incentive is the competition when that's not like that doesn't have to be everyone's incentive.
No, I know, but I'm saying like once you reach a certain skill level, right? Like there comes a point where it's like there's like self-improvement and then there's like competition.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the big thing is to be a hardcore group, you kind of need the competitive motivation. People talk a lot about how, well, you don't need to do speeds for this, you don't need to be super hardcore. But I don't know almost anyone who wants to do it who isn't competitive on some level. I think of like one person I've played with who's just like thinks it's fun to do LB. But to bring yourself into a group like this and to have like the motivation to put in the hours that we do, it takes that competitive drive. I'll believe that there is a non-competitive speeds group when I actually see it form. Because past like super casual ones, there's not even a lot of mid-core. A lot of them do one fight and get tired.
Well, I mean, a lot of these groups are just kind of, if they're, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I assume they're out doing things like no healer top kills if they're not competitive, right? They're doing things. They're just like, how can I accomplish this? What can I do with the game?
Yeah,
how can
there's
I
different aspects of the game that you definitely can take. Like that one. What's the team name?
Casual player.
Casual player. Yeah, they always do like crazy stuff. Like
they were a speeds team. Yeah, they were a speeds team. I remember them. I think the first time I saw them was they did Oracle. They did E12S Part 2. And I believe they were the group that tried a double LB3. I mean, yeah, they're an interesting group. I can't really verify this because I don't have access because it's an archive log. Maybe someone with premium can, but I remember them as the team that did that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, now that I think about it a little bit more, yeah, you guys would have to kind of be under the scope of what FFLogs provides, because that's where a lot of your competition is visible, right? And that's where all this stuff would be visible in some way.
And there are some like some of those accomplishments, like the no healer top and stuff, like they get visibility outside of FFLogs just because it's a cool accomplishment. Where like we like, just to use an example from what we and Kindred have done, like we did an UU speed like somewhat recently that got some recognizability because the YouTube video was fun to watch, even though we weren't competing against anyone. There was no one else trying to do it. We were just kind of doing it for fun. But then it like some people saw it because it was cool to see. That thing can happen sometimes, but like the Savages, especially when we're doing the on-patch speeds, yeah, the FFLogs is the main place that gets like the competition and people see it.
Okay. Well, I know, Nari, you got like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that, Nari? Is that right?
Yeah, I have a raid after this.
Nice. But, I mean, there's a handful of different things we can really dive... We've touched a lot of topics, like, indirectly, of things that we wanted to talk about, just naturally through the conversation. That's always really awesome. But I think we didn't really dive too much into the topic of, you know, we talked a lot about the community and different things, and FF logs in this sense too. But there's also the sense of private versus public logging, which I don't know. No, is that not one?
I don't know if it's a topic you want to discuss.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's something that I need to avoid.
I reminded everyone before this, but protect yourselves at all times. Follow instructions. Please go back to touch gloves if you want to.
We can talk about public versus private as long as it's cordial.
I mean, I don't think anyone on this call would like get at each other's throats, right? I mean,
don't try me.
They're gonna get mad at each other.
All I will say is Kindred is going to speed publicly forever, probably.
Okay.
And I'll leave it there.
Okay. So it's just really, is that kind of going into the same conversation you had earlier with the like visibility into? Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that's perfectly fine. We don't have to jump into it. Some of you are probably right. Some of you are probably wrong, but I guess we'll just never know.
It's all opinion.
I don't mind. I'll take the argument.
Opinion, yeah.
I'm down if you guys are.
No, I mean, you can spend your time however you want, and then just have no one ever know about it.
Oh my god.
Just hide it. Just hide it forever.
Oh my god.
If anything, we're all totally off base.
5 minutes fight.
If anything, there isn't enough representation of the ultra private. Like, they actually don't even ever release any indication that it ever happened. It's Schrodinger's speed team. And like we don't have any representation of that group, and I think that's really sad.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about public versus private, it kind of goes back to what you even said earlier about like who's even going to remember who's rank 1, who's rank 2. Like, if like I remember in Abyssus, like we were pretty much in the agreement, like maybe we don't get like first, but it's like we're gonna do our best. We're gonna try our best, but it's like you also have people that I remember when we stopped streaming, like so many people like reached out and were like, what's going on with the stream? We used to watch your streams to learn, do these things, and it's like, to me, giving away advantages that we do in instance is like worth that, just to teach other people how have other people watch and learn and improve just by watching us, right? Like, I guess it goes back to like, sure, like you have that competitive aspect of, for example, if we're not streaming or if we're streaming and RNG Factory isn't, and let's just say RNG Factory made a poor decision on X fight and we did X fight, and you see we did X fight and we did something like really good and you saw that, it's like, oh well, now that you guys can go back, and we will never know. Like that, there's like that competitive aspect, but it's like sometimes giving it up is like, who cares in the end, right? Like, sure.
I think so. I guess to like maybe dive into detail, like first, public logs are like a commodity, especially to other teams. One thing I guess hopefully everyone does is like if you do like look, if someone posts something public in even patch, like almost everyone like on the other teams will check and just sanity check some of the details that they get from that if they like did something interesting that they can, steal and use in their own. And it's actually like so helpful because I mean, even a time that you end up beating like has to be like 98% correct. Like if you're gapping it by a few seconds, like, they've done plenty of good work, and you can almost certainly take something to like springboard off, which is also like why a lot of people are so hesitant to give people that springboard. Again, it just comes back to the fact is like it's just a structurally competitive environment, and I think everyone agrees that if you do show a log publicly, it is just a huge thing that you're giving away, and whether you're comfortable with that is a personal decision that your team has to make.
I don't blame people for hiding their logs, though. I mean, I think predicting a kill time is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong. It just depends on what your goal is at the end of the day.
Yeah, it just depends on whether or not you want that visibility.
I'm personally of the opinion that if you hide all your stuff and you don't get rank 1, it's like there wasn't much of a point. And then the fact that if you show everything we talk about this in Kindred sometimes. Like we do, like because we also world prog and we do that publicly as well, and it's for the cloud. We want people to watch us doing it, and that's why we do it in the first place. So
in the chairs.
That's fair. I remember
my
we
chair.
said something similar too when we discussed private versus public. It's like if you don't get rank 1, I mean, it does feel kind of bad to hide all tier.
It could be wasn't there like a UCOP group like that was progging and did all private, and then they didn't clear it first and they just disbanded?
No,
Yeah.
the ward first, if they didn't get ward first, they were going to
okay,
disband.
okay. I misremembered the story then. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, only a handful of minutes left, but
Yo, where's Acedia? Acedia!
Yeah.
Hello, what do you need?
Where's your boxing match?
Oh, okay. All right. I'll advocate all day for private logs. So private logs, I think, are not only someone's imperative. They can do whatever their group wants. They have no obligation to go public. I actually would go so far as to say that most people who advocate for public logs are either 1, seeking clout, or 2, don't realize the ways that people can improve in this game. There's tons of private logs from last tier. In order to be competitive in speeds, you need to obtain critical thinking skills by analyzing those anyways. And I'm sure anyone from a competitive group would be happy to kick some half-baked idea over to you that you can use to get a good time. I had people ask me this year, what are we doing in speeds? And I said, well, I don't know if I can share what we're doing, but I can tell you what you should be doing. And I think there's tons of ways to help people that don't oblige people to share their competitive advantages at all.
No, you're right. But in the end,
I
it's
feel
always
like you
for
read
clout.
that off
It's
the
always
script.
Yeah.
it's always for clout in the end.
Definitely typed that out.
Like you definitely had set that up.
No,
like,
no
you had
way.
drilled that.
I mean, I've had this argument so many times because I'm going to be real. Only time I've ever felt like there was a public perception of speeds is back in 6.2 when people in NA were talking about it. You'd hear people talk about filthy log hiders, and like in NA, I legitimately had people who would insult private loggers, not realizing they're talking directly to me. Like, it's ridiculous the things you hear people say about private logs, not realizing they're talking about a specific group of 8 to 16 people in North America. And it's like, it makes it personal immediately, and a lot of people don't realize that. So I actually feel strongly about this.
Nari, go.
Because people are talking about it.
The one response that I'll have to that is that I want this community to grow, and if we're hiding, I don't think it will.
I don't think it's feasible for the community to grow, and I think there's tons of things we can do even when we're
But I
hiding.
want it to, and if we don't try, there's no
Sure, but you don't need to change how other people.
I feel like your avenue for that is
Acedia is trying.
It's not proper.
And
if you want the speed teams to grow, there are much bigger problems than.
I didn't make one. I made 2 speeds teams to see this scene grow. You can't tell me I don't want it to grow when I'm actually telling people, hey, you should try for 640 MP9. I think that's difficult for you, but aspirational. Or hey, you should try for this on that fight. You can help people in so many ways that don't involve giving up the main reason I do this, which is competition.
You know, there are rounds to this fight. I do have to send you back to the sides of the cage. For 1 minute break.
All right.
No, I think it's I do think Acedia touched on a point that's like really important, and this is how annoying it can be to speed both publicly and privately. It's like you speed privately, but people know about your team. And you're like, oh, they're just dirty, hiding, and doing stuff. And that is like Sleepo kind of has done both at certain points in time. And sometimes public logs, like people will criticize and scrutinize your log when, you know, you may have, okay, maybe you just didn't theory craft it right. And you've put that work out there. And it's really frustrating when you've basically, like, people say dumb stuff about public logs too. And honestly, I don't think anyone wins until like people just start respecting each other a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I think there is a lot of toxicity behind private versus public. I don't think either one's wrong per se. I mean, like you said, there's times where like Sleepo has gone private because like I think there's like avenues to like what you may want to hide and may want to show. Like if you're just doing like a standard fight like P9, you're not doing anything super crazy. Like you don't have anything theorycraft super crazy. Like I feel like there's really no point in hiding it. So like we've come up with like ideas that like are definitely like not of the norm, and we're like, okay, well, this is like too much of an advantage to give away, and we just don't stream that fight and don't make that fight public until like we're done or.
Excuse my ignorance a little bit on this. With the, because you know I'm a dirty no add-on, no anything, no everything kind of player, right? I don't even have any way. Like all my logs are uploaded because other people, right?
Yeah, same.
Yeah, fair. But in the end, like, isn't there a way to just say this is verified, the kill has happened within this time without having any details with it? So you can't really hyperanalyze it? Or does that not really exist?
Discussion happened before.
Discussion happened before.
It
So-
was basically the fight kill time gives too much away. Was the end.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All right.
There could be, like, we have the competition mode on FF logs for the world race now, but like, yeah, that's even what kill times people are getting. Like, if someone gets a kill time that's like 10 seconds ahead of what you were projecting, you know you're missing something, and that's now something they told you.
Even 5 seconds ahead, you know you're missing
Even
something.
5 seconds is a lot.
Reaching back to 6.20, and this is actually one of the dangers of public logs, I think, and why they need to be taken with a grain of salt. Like, you can really easily get stuck in a local maxima. Like, if you look at 6.20, you'd think the best strat on P5S is to hold by 20 seconds. But then if you look at 6.28, you'd see this is like the greatest embarrassment North America's ever suffered, and we got beat by like 6 Japanese teams who all buffed at 0 seconds instead. And like, even seeing that you pushed down to like 33 or 34, it would indicate your entire buff timing is wrong because you're not skipping 5 seconds of your 2 minutes.
There are also job changes, so like
true.
you basically had to rethink how you approach that fight, and yeah, NA made the embarrassing decision of not rethinking it properly. I mean, there are other things that kind of distracted us with that tier smile, but you know,
was a really good example this tier of like private versus public, and that was P10, and that was like heavy comp based. Like,
yeah,
a lot of teams were like Sleepo had a 750, RNG Factor had a 748, I think. And it's like, but like aside from them, the next fastest was like what, 804, and then like 808. It was like not even close.
There were 4 teams that broke the 8-minute mark, but yeah.
So
what
was, like,
we noticed,
comp decision as well. Like
it was a lot of comp. It was a lot of comp decision, but also a lot of it was I did take a peek at it. It was a lot of heal plan opti that came into that, because that fight is rough. That fight is rough.
Rough.
It is rough. Yeah, it was rough, and it's very. This is actually maybe an advice point for new teams. It's very easy to just say fuck the healers and make them eat losses that they don't necessarily have to eat. There are times where you say fuck the healers because it's actually going to be really good for the team, or there's a critical amount of safety that making the healers take a loss gets you in terms of consistency. But if you look at the differences between the teams that were just like, they didn't even try to heal the raid wide at 801. We would just die. Like, we didn't care because we knew our average time was going to be way faster than that. And those teams, they were taking way less losses on their healing, and they knew what to aim for. So that's a team. I think that's the local maxima is a little. I will say though, when I was working through and like planning heal things, I did look at the public logs, and there were things that were correct, like, or not correct, but like were good. Like, I thought they were good decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But then like we have to always try and take our spin and push it forward and do more. That's so that's kind of like the just the nuance about at least 10S and like the public versus private, and just like there was kind of a local like maxima issue on that fight.
How much? I have an idea. How much gil you guys got?
How much?
I'll offer 20 million gil per player to any group 8 who can beat one of our even patch times. Anyone want to go up with me?
20 mil?
Yeah. I don't have that much. I'll offer 20 mil per player to anyone who beats our even patch time.
Per player?
Per player. Yeah.
You
I'll
sound
pay
like you're leading a
160
market.
million if someone goes out there and beats one of our times.
I don't have much gil. 20 mil.
All right, I'm putting a team together.
Hey, can you also join the team yourself?
No.
It would have to be members that weren't part of Sleepo or RNG.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has to be someone who hasn't already said. I would put up 20 mil. I don't know if anyone will match that.
I don't know if I can match it.
I don't have 40 mil.
20 mil per player is a lot.
Yeah, honestly, I think this offer makes sense if you post your gil and like it would actually bring bankrupt you into like financial servitude, I think that makes it worth.
Acedia.
Oh, okay.
No, no, not an exception. No exception allowed.
Acedia, exception's gonna beat you. It's P10.
Because
That's
It has to
okay.
be someone who has it has to be a new player, new players.
Okay,
Aw.
okay, if a new team or like a team who had
Just make
mediocre
new
on patch results.
characters.
I mean, I'll put
No.
out 10 million for anyone who can beat one of our academy teams. Shout out academy teams, by the way. What the Tuna running Door Boss, moving on to P9, and I skipped a Blood Reppin running P10S and moving on into an unknown future. Anyone beats either of those teams, I'll pay you 10 million gil per player.
I'll put 20 mil. I'll also put 20 mil. Make it 40 mil. 40 mil per
Okay.
player.
What?
All right.
I feel like this offers a good way to start wrapping up the show. Just-
Yeah, I feel like this was timed. Acedia came into this way too prepared. Like they had a spreadsheet ready for this talk.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's officially there. Make sure they can find a way to contact you to get it. I'm pretty sure they can figure it out. But you know, Nari, you're about to just run. I'm pretty sure. But are we okay going ahead and closing up right now? Do you guys feel good?
We're good.
Everybody else, do you feel like we talked about a good amount? Like we're okay at a
I
good
don't even know
spot?
what we talked about anymore. I'm not
All right,
gonna
you guys
lie.
better be sending me applications to my team soon.
Okay, because this has been a fun talk. I mean, it's been 2 hours. Like, it's weird because it doesn't feel like 2 hours. But this has been a really strong 2 hours. I had a lot of fun learning a lot more about the scene and everything else, because this is not something that I have personally been as heavily invested in. Even, you know, I do a lot of stuff with the World Race and everything else. Speed runs, I don't spend as much time in, and so this is really educational for me in particular. I hope other people learn a little bit and aren't still as overwhelmed as I was at the very beginning of the episode. That I came to. I think I came to a little bit. But yeah, I guess we can go ahead and start wrapping up here. Let everybody kind of get back to where they were, and hopefully the people listening to this only have to listen to 2 hours instead of the 10 hours we could probably go. But with that being said, I guess you guys want to start saying your last words, and you know, if people want to find you, where they could find you. Does that seem like a good idea? Yeah. Nari, you want to start since you're gonna.
Sure.
Okay.
Nari on Twitter and Twitch is Nari_bird. I stream almost everything I do. There's a couple things I don't, but like especially every time Kindred's running, I'm streaming. So good stuff. Trans rights.
Okay. Then I guess we can go in order now. Acedia.
Hello. You can find me Acedia_Phi on Twitter or Acedia on Discord. I basically don't do anything but retweet anime girls and occasionally tweet about speeds or esports, but happy to talk to anyone who's more interested in finding out more about speeds. I'd also like to thank everyone. Thank Momo for putting this together and the invite, Frosty for producing everything. It's kind of a dream to be here with you guys today. I started playing in Promise and I was immediately interested in optimization and speeds. So literally in Promise, I looked at all your guys' speed logs, and to be here talking and meeting with you all, actually, I wouldn't believe this would happen. So it's a dream. Thank you for the invite.
Follow, good luck on following that up.
I might actually just like skip and move to the end to kind of let it cool down. But yeah, again, thank you everyone for being here. You can contact me on Discord, paulo.mon.waddleberg. And yeah, honestly, kind of same with Acedia. Like, it's so cool to actually be able to chat here.
Okay, all right. Jackal.
Yeah, I mean, you can just contact me on Twitter or Discord for Cackle Jackal. I mean, I do a lot of Omni Melee stuff, and I really like optimization and simulations and spreadsheets. So if anyone has any questions, I'm always happy to help.
All right, Momo.
You can find me at FFXIV Momo on most social media. And yeah, thank you guys for coming on. It was a fun show.
All right, Nitian.
Nitian signing off here. You can contact me on Discord. Nitian, I like talking about melees. You can also find my VODs up our RNG Factory clears on YouTube. And thank you. It's been a blast.
Yeah. And Sura.
Hey, you can find me at Sura Crescents on Discord and on Twitter, and you can find me streaming pretty often. Just kind of random things at the moment at twitch.tv/SerranoCrescents. I don't really have much else to say. I really appreciate being here. Thanks.
Oh yeah, it's been, just so you guys know, it's been amazing having this, and thank you, of course, Momo, who did a lot of heavy lifting with getting everyone together. Just in case anyone's curious how the show actually happened, Momo just like, hey dude, let's do a show on speed kills. I was like, all right, and we went from there. Momo had all the right picks for everybody to get everything together, so a lot of this goes on to Momo's shoulders for being awesome and getting everyone together. Something that obviously he's very passionate about. So yeah. Shout out to Momo. But you guys, it was awesome meeting everyone I haven't met yet here on the show. It's awesome talking to some of you who I have talked to before again here on the show. This has been a lot of fun. Every time I get a show and everyone's like clearly passionate about the topic, it just easily flies by. And this could have again gone on for hours and hours and hours and hours. But we'll cut it short. It feels short, but it's not really short for now. And thank you everybody for watching the show. And thank you for everyone putting up with the ads. Yeah, guys, it's Twitch, dude. MogTalk has to get money somehow to be able to do things like the events that we put on and everything else. So thank you everybody for that. Thank you everybody who subbed to avoid the ads. Thank you everybody who is just watching to watch. I'll get this up on YouTube as soon as I can. I'll get all the socials from everybody here on the show and throw them into the YouTube video as well to make it a lot easier to contact everyone here if you would like to do so. With that all being said, I am going to be back on this stream tomorrow. We have clear top. We are done with it in the sense of frogging it. But the group wants to at least try for a re-clear, so we will be doing that tomorrow night.
Congrats again. I was watching.
Yeah, the headset that I threw is on my head right now. It's still working. If you guys want a good headset, exclamation Corsair, it'll survive a clear of a mega.
Yeah, this whole stream is just hashtag ad.
Yeah, hashtag ad. That's all it is, guys. Hashtag ad, dudes. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, be good, stay cool, whatever, fucking be frosty, you know that thing. Guys, I'll say bye. Say bye.
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 Bye.